Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution that we know we need.
The whole damn system shut it down. The whole damn system shut it down. They think they're doing something, shut it down. It's worse than doing nothing, shut it down.
That was a clip from the song The Whole Damn System by Deana Sherif. You heard her sing, now you'll hear her story. There are so many reasons why this saga is a compelling one, especially for this audience. Deana is an activist. She was doing what many of us have done, what we encourage folks to do. She was speaking up for Palestine. She was protecting her community. And she was disrupting literal Nazis using a dog squeak-toy when she was arrested, denied bail, and spent almost a year in jail awaiting trial. That's obviously a very general synopsis. The devil really is in the details on this one. And you'll get them straight from Deana herself. It's a long one, but stick with it, please, because without the whole story, it's hard to believe she went through what she did for making some noise. It's even harder to believe if this is your first time listening. If you've never heard of Project Resolute, the motives of the police here might confuse you. If you didn't know, there's a secretive committee at the Ontario Attorney General's office who work very hard to criminalize Palestinian solidarity. It might be a shock to hear the lengths to which the Crown went through to tear this woman down. If you didn't know how the bail system has been weaponized against activists, it's going to make you real mad to hear how much time Deana served before a judge or jury could decide the merit of the bullshit charges she was facing. It's all maddening, but there's lessons to be learned here. They wanted to make an example of her. You'll hear why in a second, but what they didn't know is that while they set their legal precedents, we strengthen our resolve. While they spend their resources trying to tear us down, our communities find new ways to support one another through all of this fascism. Deana took some hits, no doubt, and she's still facing an uphill battle for which she needs support, but she is not daunted. She is better versed in the systems that work against her now and has admittedly become more radicalized, determined to fight the good fight. As we do, there is a call to action in the show notes where you can find ways to donate to Deana's legal defense. Sharing her story is another way you can help. Let's get into it. Welcome to the studio, Deana. Let's just briefly introduce yourself before we really unpack you.
For sure. So my name is Deana Sherif, and I live in Ottawa, which is the Algonquin-Anishinaabe territory, and I work in housing, and I'm an activist.
Yeah, you're an activist. That's, the tip of the iceberg here.
Yes.
Mostly activists, we don't generally like to talk about ourselves a lot. There's issues we need to get to, but we're about to tell your story, just a fraction of your story, your legal saga, because it's not everything that you are. I understand that.
Which is a big story itself, but yes.
It's a huge story that activists and organizers definitely need to hear. It's a cautionary tale, not that you did anything wrong, but of what's to come. But I think part of what explains it, not excuses it, is who you really are. Not in your hiding who you are, but you were picked on by police. We're going to hear how the Crown zeroed in on you, individual police officers, other agents of the state clearly targeted you and persecuted you. and tried to take you out of your activist game, right? Tried a lot. And I think
Yes.
we need to understand why, like why would they bother, right? Why would they act in what we're going to hear is such ridiculous ways, unconstitutional ways, for something that seems so trivial of all the things that are going on? You know, we're going to talk squeak toys and you're going to be scratching your heads. But I was looking for something specific on Deana. We wanted to find what her bail conditions had been. Anyway, I did a quick Google search, really basic stuff. The amount of returns I got that, you know, were Substacks, little articles, there's like an army, or rather like an industry of right-wing people, media. I'm so hesitant to use that kind of word. I don't know what it is. It's a
propagandists.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
They are obsessed with you, Deana. Deana, you're an Antifa ringleader, a perpetual protester, and they print your bail conditions. They encourage people at the bottom of their articles. These bootlickers include police emails saying, like, if you see this woman breaking her bail conditions, wait till you hear what those bail conditions were. Like, that's a tease, though. You don't get that yet. If you see her breaking these ridiculous bail conditions, here's who you can call. And they do, you know, or they think they do. And I've not really seen something like this. My first introduction to you, so when you're like, I'm an activist. Well, you're a certain kind of activist too, because when I first found out about you, I had just shown up to Thornhill, parked my car, and you were attempting to disperse someone shooting a nail gun. People know that photo. You know, you see a woman with a keffiyeh squared up boxing style with a man holding a nail gun. Maybe we'll include the photo in the show notes, or maybe the fucking cover art, because I love that photo.
Yes.
That's Deana.
Well, I'm unapologetic about my activism. I am not afraid to go head to head with the people who are not afraid to be openly bigoted. I am, often targeted violently. But yes, I do have a lot of haters, but they're the right kind of haters. I have no issue with it. In fact, they fuel me because I know that I'm effective. And I think that is the reason why the police, who, yes, have known me before, because my activism didn't only include climate action, which I have been doing since I was a little child. I was the one I'm almost 50, and in grade 8, I introduced the recycling program as the Minister of Environment in my school, and I won the Community Service Award. I wrote a speech on Amnesty International and political prisoners, of all things, who knew that, after, 37 years, I would be experiencing something similar, right? And I had been profiled very early on when I was counter-protesting when the convoy tried to take over a church in Ottawa back in June to October of 2022. And so I was even mentioned in the POEC, which was the Public Order Inquiry into Commission into the use of the Emergencies Act, where I stood outside as a lone protester and live streamed heckling the convoy. I took the week off. They were testifying that week. And I listened to their testimonies. And when they came out for break, I threw their testimonies in their faces because they were lying. And right away, I was open about where I stood on October 8th, 2023 online. And I remember getting some blowback from some of my followers. They were shocked. A lot of people are just catching up. But if you were paying attention, like I was, and my family was, and my community was, we knew what this meant, right? And so it needed to be addressed. And our government knew what it meant too, but it didn't matter because they are working on behalf of the Zionist entity and the Israeli entity. At some point, though, it's funny because people thought I was getting paid by Trudeau. Just to bring it back, you say that there's this industry. Well, people legit thought that Trudeau was paying me because I was such a loud, anti-convoy, anti-bigoted protester. And they seemed to think I was everywhere. Well, they were everywhere. So it's like And they keep calling me, like you said, what is it, a perpetual protester?
Yes.
I'm seeing the same I'm counter protesting the same people. Why am I the perpetual protester when they're the ones coming up with new things to hate? And I'm staying consistent in my activism, saying, no, human rights are human rights.
They use Antifa ringleader as a slur, Deana. These people are not us, right? Like, yes, no, I can understand everyone made the pivot, whether you were learning about Palestine for the first time or you had done Palestinian solidarity work. It was all hands on deck. Let's help set the stage for not your first arrest, probably ever, but in terms of this story. It started with a ridiculous set of charges. But before we get to the charges, you were at a Palestinian solidarity action, right? What was it?
So there were two actions on April 15th of 2024, and I was at both of those actions. In the morning, there was about 150 of us that attended the Export Development Canada, EDC, which is responsible for the exports of our weapons and other things. And so it was a targeted action. And so we had blocked off an intersection where the EDC was. There were activists who were chained together, blocking the entranceways. There's two entrances, one at the bridgehead and then the main doors. And they were blocking anyone from being able to enter or exit. So there's no business as usual. And other activists, including myself, were part of blocking the intersection and handing out leaflets to explain to passerbys what the purpose of this targeted action was. And so I had made my way up to one of those intersections, and I was talking to another guy and came back down hearing somebody on the megaphone saying that the protesters were hit by a car. And I said, I have to make my way down there. And I get there, and this rich man in a BMW was standing outside his car, and the police were just speaking to him. And he decided he was going to breach the police barricade. And I later got to see some pictures of a cop running after his car, literally trying to stop him. And the police just did nothing. They let him go. And so the man goes off. And so now we're about maybe half an hour, I believe, later, close to the end of our action. It was about 10 in the morning. A few people had taken erasable pink Sharpie and wrote on the windows of the EDC, "Shame, Free Palestine." Those were the two things. Nothing vulgar, even though they would have been entitled to. And all of a sudden, I say to one of the PLTs, because they're sitting there talking about trying to arrest these people, I said, "What are you going to do about this?" And he goes, "Nothing now." I said, "Well, good. Like, you didn't do anything about the guy who tried to hit people, and you're upset because people are writing with a marker." As I'm talking to him, I see one of the marshals, a marshal I know well, start running past me. And then a few other people running. And I said, there's something happening. So I run because I'm live streaming. Sure enough, another police officer comes by and corners these two people I guess they were chasing after, pushes them against the window of the building. And I am behind, and there's about maybe 5 of us, 6 of us at the time, and a police officer trying to grab one of the people. Within minutes, there's like a melee of people. There's about 5 police officers surrounding these 2 people, and then some other activists surrounding them. And I'm still in the background filming until I look down. And one of the people that they had pushed against the window had fallen to the ground and was stuck between the legs of the police officers and the other person and the window. And they were in the fetal position trying to block their face and their chest with their arms up. And they were in danger. And so I immediately went around, got on my knees, put my body against the window, took the person and pulled them under me to protect them. And I said, "Don't worry, I got you." And I was getting hit from all sides, kicked, whatever. Eventually it ended and everybody moved away, and I was able to get up, help the person up, help the other person up that was falling into us at one point. The police just put everybody in such absolute danger over something that is covered under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. By the way, you are allowed to write on a government building because that's protected speech. Okay, it's part of a protest.
This happened at a time where this had been almost common practice for Ontario police at this point, right? So the Indigo 11 essentially were picked up for similar reasons. We saw spray paint on the roadway. They just dove right into the middle of a massive protest to pick up people who had spray painted a road. And I mean, we started talking about Palestinian solidarity rests with the story of Sky Johnson, who was left a piece of paper on a Starbucks and you know, just now maybe ending their conditions for conditional discharge. So it had serious repercussions for not even really vandalism, right? Because the damage isn't permanent. They were just political messages in different art forms, and the cops were just rounding them up and attempting to charged a lot of folks. None of those charges stuck.
Of course not.
But it was like, I feel like at some point they were given instructions or permission to crack down on something they wouldn't have normally touched at all, right? Because of what you're describing, the chaos, they're supposed to be there, at least under the guise, right? We all know why they're really there, protect capital, yada, yada, yada. But they got to keep up the whole guise of public safety. So to cause riots, to cause injuries, to stop Sharpies from being used on windows is really counter to what their mandate is supposed to be. But all of these rules have gone out the window for Palestine. So nobody listening is going to doubt for a second these cops did not give two shits about some angry rich man driving through protesters, but were focused on the first person to break the smallest bylaw, law, like any kind of infraction that they felt like they would allow to pick them up, trigger a disbursement of the protest, and have their way.
I think you're right, because it was at the end of the action and they didn't have any reason to arrest anybody. So I think they tried to fabricate a reason to arrest people. So that first action landed me 2 of my charges out of the 9 that I'm going to relay the other 7. But from that action, they tried to say that I obstructed an arrest, I prevented an arrest, which I didn't. And then they also said that I assaulted a police officer. And one of the and I'm like, how would I have assaulted a police officer? I didn't touch anybody. They tried to say that one of the police officers got dead leg. He wrote a statement. He got dead leg. And the only person that could have done it was me, even though the video that they had shows none of that at all. It was so bad.
Dead leg sounds so dramatic. It's a Charlie horse, right?
What? Right. Okay.
His own baton hit his leg or something, and he ended up with a Charlie horse. Anyway, I'm allowed to say that.
It's ridiculous. But none of that happened. And we'll get to that when we get further into the trial and so on. But they didn't charge me at that moment. Okay. So I had no idea charges were coming. We just did that action. And then I went home. Took a nap, woke up, saw that there was an emergency action being held at the Sir John A. Macdonald.
No rest.
And so, of course, I had low battery on my phone. I didn't have time to charge my phone. And I had lost my voice from all of the protesting that was happening earlier on in the day. And so I just grabbed my stuff. And so I get there, we're there to shame anybody who was going in and out of this celebration. And I add a bit of humor to my live streams, and I, ask people, you're against genocide, right? Seeing where they're at if they're walking into this Eid celebration. And sometimes we got a thumbs up. Some people most people completely ignored us. They did not want to touch that conversation, which is crazy. It's 6 months into the assault on the Palestinian people. And I would walk. I spoke to Yasser Naqvi. He fed me a bunch of BS. which I later found out was truly BS, about, maybe his stance is anti-genocide, but he's doing absolutely nothing to push the Liberal Party to stop this, genocide. At the time, we were just looking for a damn ceasefire, right? Like, I start losing my voice. And so I pull out an electronic whistle to, play with the chants instead of me yelling out the chants. And I'm barely speaking. And unfortunately, I run out of battery on my cell phone. So I tell everybody, sorry, guys, I'm going to have to cut out, but I have my body camera and I'm going to share whatever happens, if there's something to share, my live stream cuts. And shortly after my live stream cuts, we're still protesting. And I'm busy, sounding my whistle at this car, a diplomat's car. My back is turned to the building. And what I didn't see is that there was this really big man, 6'2", big guy, stocky guy, later to be found out as MP Brad Viss from Abbotsford, I believe, BC. Plays rugby, so he's fit, okay? Big guy. I turn around. What I didn't know is that he walked by. He says he brushed the drummer, whose back was turned to him, by the way. But it's my opinion that he purposely bumped into the drummer because he didn't apologize. And he even said in his testimony, if I bump into somebody, I say, excuse me. And I said to my lawyer, why didn't he say excuse me then when he bumped into this guy? He didn't. And so they get into a little words, and the PPS, pull it apart or whatever. And this guy, I don't see this. What I see is when I turn around is this big guy do this over another female activist who is also about my height, 5'5", and she walks with a cane. And so I'm thinking, what is happening? So I blow the whistle. In other words, calling attention to it and trying to repel this guy. And immediately he turns and gets into the face of another one of our comrades. And this guy is a bit taller and he's right in his face saying, I dare you to hit me. I dare you to hit me. Why are you inciting violence? I don't know who this guy is, keep in mind. I later found out who he was. But here he is trying to call on one of our comrades on a fight. So they're both taller than me. I take my whistle, I put it right between both of their heads, and I blow it. And then PPS comes. As soon as I see PPS come, I let go and I'm about to pull my hand away, and he grabs my hand and rips the whistle out of my hand. So of course there's there's all of us. All I'm yelling is, give me my whistle back. Give me my fucking whistle back. And PPS pulls me away and he gets pushed into the tunnel. There's a tunnel. So he goes away. I chase around, try to get my whistle back, tell him to give me my whistle back. He lies, says that I put it right in his ear. That never happened. And there's video to prove it. And then I follow him yelling at him to give me my whistle. I'm cussing out PPS as well because they keep pulling me and I'm not doing anything. And I'm in front of him now. I'm not even following him anymore. I'm just saying, give me my whistle. And I'm being pulled by PPS until we get to an intersection where he's about to walk into a building. So I say, okay, I'm not getting my whistle. I'm like, yeah, run, bitch. That's it. And I go back. It turns out he had thrown my whistle. So somebody hands me my whistle. Within 2 minutes of that interaction, and this one is unreal. By the way, there's Parliament cameras that are trained on me, okay? And we'll get to that in a second. Why are they trained on Deana? Weird. There's 35 of us there, but we later find out that the cameras were specifically trained on me, but poorly. So this is where this gets a little bit weird. Within 2 minutes, a man exits the building of the Sir John A. Macdonald building. Me and the majority of the protesters are about 12 feet, maybe 15 feet away from the entrance door, having a discussion with another participant that just left. And I'm just sitting there, you can see it in the cameras. I'm just lying against the railing, and I turn my head and I see this man come down the stairs and immediately attack a woman who is standing there by herself holding a sign. And so right away, I sound the whistle and start making my way towards there slowly so PPS can deal with it because they're standing on the stairs. Like, why aren't they dealing with it? He immediately lets go of the woman with the sign because the drummer starts banging his drum really hard, but he's at the far end of the sidewalk. He goes right to the man at the sidewalk, starts trying to rip his drumstick out of his hand. This guy's violent. He's trying to rip the drumstick out of his hand, is unsuccessful. I'm standing there maybe about 7 or 8 feet away from this guy with another person that was slightly in front of me and another person beside me. They're yelling at PPS. He comes directly towards me, pushes somebody out of the way, and starts trying to rip the whistle out of my hand. But this time, the whistle is on my wrist, so he can't get to it. Then he leaves because PPS pulls him away, and I'm yelling at PPS, and PPS is walking with him. The rest of us are yelling, and about 4 of us are following both him and PPS. Now, this man happens to be wearing a kippah. Okay, this is important. So Brad Viss, no kippah. David Sachs, who was the CEO, I believe, of the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, which I didn't know either. I had no idea who this man was wearing his kippah at the time, which we had met earlier. I asked him the question, do you believe in genocide? He just says, thank you. And that's in my live stream. Whatever. He's just another guy going into the event. The light turns red. I say my final piece to the PPS, and you see this is all on camera footage except for the most important parts. And I turn around because we're not getting anywhere. I basically tell him to go fuck himself. I turn around and I walk back to the action. That's it. I leave shortly after, get home. 12 days later, which is the 27th of April, you know when you feel like you're followed, and I don't want to be the crazy person who thinks that I'm being followed. Well, I put that feeling aside, but it turns out I was being followed. And I literally ran a few errands, got in my car, had picked up my mom before that. And then we drove to the weekly protest, dropped her off in front of the protest so I could find parking. That's 12 days later. And I am caught off guard. I'm just, trying to get my activist stuff after I parked. And all of a sudden, when I stood up, somebody from behind me grabbed my arm and put it under and held me firmly. And at first I was startled, turned around, and he said, you're under arrest for assaulting a police officer. And the first thing I said was, and I just turned and I said, I never assaulted a police officer. He goes, if you try to resist, I'm going to have to put you to the ground and arrest you that way. And I just look at the ground and I'm thinking, this day probably would have come that, if I would have been arrested, and always, I knew I would never resist the arrest. There's no point in resist. And why am I going to resist arrest with a guy with a gun? Like, whatever. So that was fine. I was like, but I needed my mom to know that I'm not going to be there. She's going to need to get home, whatever. So I turn around and I put my hands behind my back and I'm ready to be arrested. And I just start yelling at people who are driving by, please go to the protest and tell them Deana Sherif has been arrested. And luckily, one of the passerby that I didn't recognize and went to the protest and told my mom and everybody else that I had been arrested. But they wanted to do it in secret because, it would have been an issue had one of the comrades been arrested and everybody would have come along and videoed it and stuff. After they had put the cuffs on and started walking me towards my car, I started yelling for my mom. Just saying, Mom, Mom, so that she would know that I was arrested. And all of a sudden, one of the constables, her name is Constable Kayla Hotot, put her hand over my mouth and covered my mouth. And I'm like, get your hand off my mouth. Like, what are you doing? Then they put me in the car and they had me lying on my back. I had, just so you know, that I had a bracelet on, my whistle on, and the cuffs on. And I was on my back and it hurt. So I pulled because I have small hands, I pulled my hands out of the cuffs, pulled off the bracelet, pulled off the whistle, and was about to slip the cuffs back on as I sat up to see them debating whether or not they were going to search my car. The doors open and all of them are looking in my car. And I'm like, nope. So I bang on the window. I said, Get the fuck away from my car. I do not give you permission to look into my car. And so they notice she's not wearing her cuffs. They jump, they come back. And one cop puts the cuffs back on. I'm not resisting again. And she decides, she's like, I'm going to sit in the back with her. And she's pushing me against the window on the ride there. And I'm like, wow, this is effective. Like, where do you think I'm going to go? There's no window. I can't open the window. I can't, like, what do you think you're accomplishing here? Then they tried to read me my charges, and I just started singing, leave it, Palestina. That's it. And I just did it for the whole time. And every time they tried to talk, all I did was sing until they put me in the cell. And once they got me in the cell, I brought the protest there. And so for 9 hours, and so I stood on the bed and I chanted and I started banging with the chant like the drummers did. And I did that for 9 hours. I stopped at 11 because there's other people who have court the next morning too. And I realized I wasn't being let out that night. I was going to be held. And so I did that. And I actually ended up writing a song out of those chants because they were getting boring. And I thought I would actually talk about what was happening in the genocide. And it turned into a song. But anyway, that was that.
Okay, so the reason we got a lot of those details about what happened at both of these actions was because they help explain, sort of, they explain the ridiculousness of some of these charges. So let's go through the charges. Can you read them? Because I think you got 9 from these three incidents, right? So there was 2 actions on one day. Right. Then they tried to hit you up with resisting arrest. 12 days later, they sat on you for a bit, picked you up. Right. And we know they're all bullshit. I mean, we've seen it a million times over. Your case is a little different because you ended up going to trial, and that's going to get interesting as well. But what were your other charges there? So from the first incident,
we had the 2, like I said, the obstruct and the assault a police officer.
The second action is where I think it gets even more interesting, because the criminal harassment charge that you ended up with is essentially, that was following, I'm using scare quotes, people, following this gentleman who had stolen your whistle and, hollering at him a bit. Right? Like what normally should amount to like days of harassment and stalking and like sustained, almost like unprovoked.
Correct.
That was where that criminal harassment charge was focused. Because like this will resonate with a lot of people. It had a real Eve Ongler vibe, where you're talking to someone on camera, asking them pointed questions, pressing them, shaming them, maybe hollering at them, yelling at them. Like, we've seen this pattern. We use this tactic. We burst into restaurants and do it to people in the halls of power, outside the halls of power. This is not, Deana's off the wall tactics. Nope. And you ended up with a criminal harassment charge for that. And then let's go to the whistle and the charges around that.
Okay, so for Brad Viss, they charged me with assault with a weapon, and they claimed that the whistle, the electronic whistle, was the weapon. And they said that I criminally harassed him because I had followed him, even though he stole my whistle. They also added another charge, which is intimidation, which is a charge that they normally use for labor movements and strikes and stuff. So this was a little bit out of context, but they put it in there anyways to try to get me to be guilty of intimidation.
And this intimidation aspect, too, is part of Carney's new plan for the criminal code as well. Like, he really wants to enshrine the idea of intimidating people from going into a building. Correct. I mean, it's hidden in this anti-Semitism battle where we're outside synagogues for no fucking reason whatsoever other than we hate Jews, right? Not that they're selling Palestinian lands inside, or that we're, attacking Jewish hospitals when we're walking past Mount Sinai. And so, but this idea that you can't intimidate people, it's so arbitrary too. Like, what intimidates? How do you know how someone feels? It's like, someone can just say, I feel intimidated, the same way cops say, I was scared, so I was justified. It's such a fucked up charge to begin
a
with.
6'2" rugby playing man who, tackles people on the daily in his, rugby active. My son is a champion rugby player, okay? I know all about rugby as a mom of a rugby player, and just give me a fucking break already. But anyway, then we go to David Sachs, and same for the assault with a weapon, because I had blown the whistle, in criminal harassment, because I followed him for 3 blocks, is their story, even though, yes, he was there, but I was actually dealing with the PPS officer. And then they also, the other one was possession of a weapon for the purpose of dangerous purpose. But they added the hate motivation to David Sachs because he was visibly Jewish. Not that he attacked 4 people before we all decided to berate PPS for doing fuck all. They tried to paint me as anti-Semitic, and they published that. And they were summary charges at the time. Just so at this point, they were summary charges. I could go to jail for up to 2 years less a day for these charges.
Okay, so now you're facing not only charges, but bail conditions. This is going to play into the second part of your story, right? So you're issued bail conditions.
No, I wasn't yet. I was denied bail as a single mother with 0 criminal record, 0 criminal history, who owns a business, who owns a home, who has 2 children at home, who had an elderly couple living with her that were dependent on me as well. They were a couple from India that I brought into my house because of the housing issue, and they became family. Yeah, and so on the 28th of April, I couldn't believe
the day
it.
After you're picked up, right?
After the next day, because I spent the night in the holding cell, and then finally I am, called by duty counsel because the lawyers that I tried to have call, the police said that they weren't answering their phones because it was the weekend, and they weren't criminal lawyers because I didn't know any criminal lawyers. I just needed to get a hold of somebody, and you can't call your family members, and so I just waited till the next day and listened to the Crown use the most disgusting, they lied over and over again, and they repeat the same thing over and over again. This is my introduction to being part of the justice system now. And I just sat there and listened, and they actually used, as part of their reasoning, is there was a fake peace bond application attempt against me that had continuously been postponed. And it was an affidavit full of complete fabrications and twisted stories. This is important because they put that in there. It was untested. And the justice of the peace used that, as well as the other lies, to deny me bail. And they had no right to do that because it was untested in court. And so I got shipped off that night to the Ottawa Carleton Detention Center. For the first time in my life, I went to jail. Now, if you asked me if I would have gone to jail when I was younger, maybe. I hung around with some pretty shady people. And out of all of my siblings, I was most likely the one to go to jail. But at 47 years old, after establishing my life and, consistently doing good work for housing and my community and all that, this was insane. But I ended up in jail.
Okay, I did not know that, so I'm trying to stay calm. That peace bond, did it have anything to do with the same critins we were talking about before?
Yes. And what you should know is that when that peace bond application was first filed against me, I attended court I was ready to defend myself against the peace bond. I still didn't receive disclosure, but the Crown decided that they were going to intervene. And so I was required to give all of my disclosure to the Crown, and the Crown promised me that I would receive disclosure. This was in January of 2026. We show up in February to do the hearing. I still hadn't received the disclosure. March, I asked for it to be postponed till April because I wanted to subpoena some people, and I still hadn't received the disclosure. Each time I kept being promised that I was going to get the disclosure. On April 26th, finally, we were supposed to have the hearing the day before I was arrested. And the Crown at the beginning in January told me, I am intervening because it costs $5,000 a day to run these courts, and we don't want it to go off the rails. Well, now I had already appeared 5 times, and we still hadn't gotten anywhere. And on April 26th, all of a sudden, that Crown guy disappears. A new Crown gets up, says we are no longer intervening, which was weird. I was like, okay. So we postponed it to, I believe we were going to meet again in May because it's every last Friday of the month. But I got arrested the following day, and they used the affidavit as a cudgel to keep me in jail. So this was a calculated move by the Crown's office. And the lawyer who was representing the guy with the fake peace bond application against me had posted that she was providing the Crown with evidence in my case against me. So she turned herself into a potential witness, which will matter later on in the conversations that we have about this saga. So it was a calculated move by the Crown's office, and I was denied bail, and I spent the next 53 days in jail until I could have a bail review in front of a judge. And what most of your viewers may or may not know is that justices of the peace are the ones who will do the initial bail hearing. And justices of the peace are former accountants or board members or police officers. They did not study law like a lawyer or a judge. And so they heavily rely on the bullshit that comes from the Crown. Okay, and this is truth. And I'll tell you, when I was in jail, I learned it very quickly. And I would tell the women who were just first coming in, who thought they were getting out the next day or after the weekend, what does the Crown want? They'd say, they don't want me to go. I'm like, you're not going. And I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or ruin your day or think that I'm smarter than you. This is how it works. If the Crown says that you're not going to get bail, you're not. You have to wait until you do a bail review because, whatever. And then you'll get out because you're going to be before a judge who understands the law. And in my case, that justice of the peace, Lapointe, her name was, if I remember, my lawyer had said she made 10 errors in law in her judgment against me. 5 of them were egregious. The judge, Justice Ian Carter, agreed with my lawyer that because what they did is they said bail set not met. And they didn't even give me an opportunity to get a surety or anything. And they said, no, you're going to jail. And that's exactly what happened. I spent 53 days in jail until I, was before Justice Ian Carter, and he let me out on my own recognizance with conditions.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute. We need to know how you got these bail conditions. Okay, so in your bail review, you finally were let go, but you had to, what was your, let's hear your conditions. We dug them out so you could read them, right?
Right. So the usual conditions are, live at this address. If you change the address, tell the investigator. A weapons ban, which I don't have weapons anyways.
Like not specifically whistles. Just what most people would consider weapons.
Yeah. The usual one, and then just stay away from those 2 people. Don't go to where they work, whatever. I didn't even know who they were. I don't care. That wasn't my intentions. That's fine. All of these things were easy peasy. And
don't go to that building. right?
Right.
Don't go to that.
Don't go to SJAM or Sir John A. Macdonald building. I had never gone there before. I have no reason to go again. Like, these things were fine. It's just, then there were the two others, which the language is super important.
One, because they accuse you of breaching them later, spoiler alert. But two, they reveal an inherent racism within the legal system.
This one is definitely racist. So this is on June 18th, I was released of 2024. And it says, do not attend any protests in relation to the Israeli-Hamas conflict.
So loaded. That is so loaded. And related, like how related? Loosely related? We can make this intersectional and analysis. Like it's all very related. But, okay.
Well, how hard is the court trying to keep the word genocide out of
Palestine?
I wasn't there to, right. I'm not there to support Hamas. That wasn't it. That's not why we're there. We're there to support the Palestinian people.
Like that is the Palestinian exception right out for you. Like they won't even write out the word.
That's right.
They won't even write out the word.
So that was one. And so in other words, I couldn't attend those protests anymore, which I have to say was very difficult on me. You're removed from your community. You're removed from, that weekly ability to grieve with everybody, to inspire everybody, to release because of everything that you're inundated with the week for the whole entire week, and you need to release that, right? Like it was disgusting. And they took that from me, and I will never forgive the justice system for that. And then here's the other one. This is the one that, gets me again in trouble later, which is do not use any devices or instruments that have sound projection or emission as their sole function, comma, including the whistle or megaphone, comma, but not including a cell phone or a radio.
Okay, some people would just be like, I want out of jail. It's been 53 days. I don't give a shit. Was that pretty much your mentality? Like, these are ridiculous bail conditions, but get me the fuck out of here.
Well, the way that it was explained to me is that these are, conditions. You get out of jail first, and then you can do a bail modification, like bail condition modification. So let's just get you out of jail, which I really wanted to do. I had an 11-year-old daughter or 10-year-old daughter at the time. And I had my business. I had my son, as well, 25 years old. It was I had a dog who was ill. Like, I had cats. I have responsibilities, and they took me from that. What they try to do is they try to make you lose your income, and then you lose your house and you lose everything. Fortunately for me, I work in co-op housing. I had a community who stood behind me 100%, who are aware of the tactics used against Muslims and Black and brown people and anybody who supports these causes. But yeah, jail was difficult. I don't think anybody really understands what it's like to be locked in a room, and as an adult person even, and you can't leave that space. Like, you're stuck there. It's fucked up. Okay. It fucks with you.
The confinement.
Anyways, so that's what I was left with on June 18th. I could go to other protests. The judge was very clear that he would not, because he believed in the right to assembly, and he knew that I was an activist for all of these other causes. And he specifically said that I could attend any other protests, just not Israeli-Hamas conflict protests. That's important. That's key as well.
Well, good, because none of these have to do with the Israeli-Hamas conflict. They're having to do with the genocide against Palestinian people from an occupation. Israel doesn't exist. There's your loophole. Who needs a lawyer?
Once you find out why I got arrested again, you'll know that they would have found a way to put me back in jail.
Yeah. Clearly. I mean, even without getting to this next part, it's clear you're a target. there is collusion amongst the usual suspects, plus a few extra characters in your case. And they're not happy. They're out to get you, and no tinfoil hats needed. So, but for the so that we get to some of the other important parts of your story, including the trials and your second jail experience, your extended stay. Let's go over how you got picked up again for breach. You are allowed to go to other protests, and so you did. They're not going to keep you at home. What happened here, very briefly, how did they pick you up for a breach of those conditions, allegedly?
Well, a bunch of neo-Nazis decided they were going to come for a third year in a row and desecrate the Aboriginal World War II War Memorial in Ottawa, World War II, where we beat the Nazis. And I went to go protest that along with some other Indigenous elders and community leaders and so on. And I went and I took a dog squeaky toy, this watermelon dog squeaky toy. And for those who can't, see it, it's the size of your palm and it looks like a piece of watermelon. And I squeezed it to disrupt the CBC trying to platform Nazis.
How loud is it? Does it still work? Can we hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Are you allowed to squeak it? I give you full permission to squeak it in my ear.
That's what I was doing.
A squeak toy.
Okay.
Exactly what you expect. Okay.
So these piece of shit cops, by the way, the Nazis were actually wearing swastika t-shirts, and one of them had a swastika tattooed on their wrist. So I was clearly there to protest Nazis.
All right.
And so I'm squeaking this toy and live streaming, and this same cop, Constable Kayla Hotot, that I told you about earlier, who lied about other stuff, comes to me and says that I can't be there. She's going to trespass me. I'm breaching my conditions. And so I push back. I'm like, oh, yeah, what condition am I breaching?
Not literally.
Right. Yeah, I didn't literally push her back.
For the record.
Exactly. Which, don't worry, there was more than one angle, which she wasn't aware of when we get to the trial part. But anyways, so she said that I'm breaching. And so they arrest me. And then after I was taken in, I caught 2 new charges. Again, another one was resist arrest, which I had not done. In fact, they had tried to make it appear by playing hacky sack with my phone that they purposely threw on the ground, or like pushed my hand so it would fall on the ground. It was ridiculous. And they said I was causing a disruption. So again, a charter protected right to protest. But because I was singing, swearing, yelling, that was causing a disruption. Those were the 3 charges.
You're on a show called Blueprints of Disruption. Clearly, we encourage people to be as disruptive as possible. Literally, shows on it. Many, many shows where this has got to be like 233 at this point or something by the time we're done. And again, not like to take away from your efforts, but these are things we've all done, right? Like we have all gotten in the faces. We sing at protests. We make noise for the sake of making noise. Counter protests, we've done a few episodes on those. These are clear instructions, right? Like some of the only purpose of counter protests is to drown out whatever the action is. Sometimes it's to block, to shield the children from, these transphobes, but sometimes it's to use noise to drown out. We use these tactics. We share them amongst ourselves, and now police clearly have the tools to pick us up on them, right? Like that's one of the reasons we're really focused on your story at Blueprints, because of these charges that you're getting are from really mundane shit.
It's bullshit. And the least you can do is disrupt neo-Nazis. Literally, the guy who organized it has TikTok videos saying Hitler was right. He has TikTok videos talking about killing Jews. They called me anti-Semitic, but then they go and arrest me a second time when I'm actually trying to disrupt literal anti-Semites. And at the war memorial where we killed the Nazis, okay, all I'm doing is squeaking a dog toy and telling them to go fuck themselves. And yeah, I got picked up by, racist cops. So yeah, I got put back in jail. And once again, I was denied bail.
Well, of course, because you've been charged with breach. So like
it's a reverse
people need to pay
onus
attention,
now.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you accept or have, you don't have a choice. You end up with ridiculous bail conditions, difficult bail conditions.
Mm-hmm.
There will be attempts by authorities. They walk around with these conditions. They know what they are. And, even with Deana, like they will stretch the reality to try to then pick you up on these charges. And it won't really matter even if these charges are bullshit, because once you go in front of a judge and ask him, can I please get out on bail again? And on paper, you're down as breaching. Sorry, yeah, thank you.
It's
the
important.
Justice of the Peace. They are looking at, the last time someone let you out, you broke the rules. And so, no, you are staying until our legal system gets to your trial.
I just want to touch on one thing. It's really important because it's reverse onus. But here's the thing. At bail hearings, they won't listen to your evidence, but they will listen to the Crown's evidence.
Interesting.
Interesting is right. They say we're not going to deal with evidence here, but the Crown will present their case as to why I need to stay in jail and use examples of what happened at the protest, but my lawyer can't do that, okay? Or we open it up to an actual hearing, which you don't want to do because we don't have our evidence prepared. None of us knew that my daughter had taken video herself. She was standing behind me. My daughter, I love her, at 10 years old, smartest one, took a secondary video which was paramount and totally fucked up Hotot's bullshit narrative that she literally lied on the stand about, but we'll get to the trial later. But anyway, so back in jail, denied bail, I said, I want to go straight to trial. They just want to keep milking me. I have to pay for another bail review. Like, I just want to go to trial. And so I had a different lawyer because my current lawyer was very busy with other clients, and she recommended a different lawyer. And we were ready. So I had been picked up August 31st, and we were ready to go to trial in February. He had everything done, everything ready. And the Crown really wanted me to take a plea deal, and I refused. I wanted to go to trial. I wanted a judge in Canada to tell me that this squeaky toy was a weapon. And so all of a sudden, the Crown says they don't have availability in February, and they don't have availability in March, April, or May. The soonest they can do it is June, which is also a tactic. They thought that if they prolonged me being in jail, that I would take a plea deal, because that is what happens. Mm-hmm. The majority of the people who are incarcerated are legally innocent, and the longer you keep them in jail, the more they're ready to take a plea deal, okay? Because they want to get the fuck out. That's not me. I'm a pig-headed bull. And so I said, okay, if I'm going to be in jail for 7 months instead of for 4 months, can you please tell me what law books I should be ordering so that I could read them and start studying law, which is what I did.
You don't have to answer this, but I'm wondering, was your counsel supportive of your pig-headedness?
Absolutely. My lawyers, okay, so this is really important note for people.
I agree with your position.
Yeah.
I was teasing you there, but I can see lawyers, not movement lawyers,
That's
especially if people end up with just whatever they can find, and they would just be like, hey.
That's the point I want to make. First of all, there's a lot of Zionist lawyers in the criminal legal system, so people need to be aware of that, okay? And it Crown's office, but also the ones representing defense. So if you're going to be part of a movement, you really want somebody who's on board with, is there a genocide? They have to recognize there's a genocide, and they have to be good people. And a lot of criminal lawyers are not, criminal defense lawyers are not good people. And I'm not just talking about what their decision, like what their idea is on the genocide or not. They're just, anybody who's been through the system will tell you, okay, you need a good person, and definitely somebody who is a part of the movement is going to be a good person. And that's why my lawyer recommended another lawyer.
We've had your original lawyer on the show, Nora.
Yeah, and I was in jail at the time, I believe. I think. I don't know.
Yes.
Actually, I heard about...
We didn't ask her about your case. It was all very pending.
No. I'm pretty sure... So I learned about your show while I was in jail by Joe, who was also on your show, my stream partner and friend. But people who... are willing to defend their client. They told me what the risks were, because that's their job. They told me, everything I needed to know, but they were very supportive of the decision I was making, because they knew this was bullshit. All of this was bullshit.
And fighting these is not just personal. We've heard this time and time again, right?
No.
Precedent-setting tactics are being deployed against us that will then allow them to, normalize it. It normalize these oppressive police and crown behaviors. So that's the important part, that separation these lawyers need to make, because it's drilled 100%. Into them. Get the best thing for your client. And maybe the best thing is the least amount of time spent in prison, not the long-term implications to the movement.
Absolutely. Every decision I made was with the movement in mind. And actually, I remember having this, my mom, she went through a depression while I was in jail. And I remember her talking to me, and she's like, Deana, whatever the crown wants, just take it or whatever. And I said, absolutely not, Mom. And it's not that she doesn't believe in the movement.
She wants you home.
It's that she wants me home. My daughter was going through something. She was only 10, 11 years old. My son, it really affected the entire family. Okay. And they knew why I was doing what I was doing. But what I had said was, she says, a lot of people are losing their jobs because of this. Jewish people are losing their jobs for speaking out against the genocide. I said, absolutely, Mom. And this is exactly why I have an obligation to see this through, because I have a special situation here where I have a community that is behind me 100%. I'm not losing my job over this. I have a son who is an amazing person. He had said to me when I was in jail, Mom, I'm going to go into work for you. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And he held the business. He held the household. He's a good kid. But I had an obligation to the movement to not capitulate to the system and to not back down. And so I wanted to see it through. And I didn't waste a day when I was in jail too. There's always people to be at their service or help or whatever. And I made sure to kept myself busy while I was in jail, studying, helping people, got laundry jobs so that I could, be sane. I could do.
You said to me, there is community in jail.
There is community in jail. They were my best support. I was their support. There was a point where I was appointed dorm leader, which I hated that term. And I turned it into a collective, because the dorm leader, if you pissed off the dorm leader, you're getting bounced from dorm. There's no discussion. For me, it was more like, let's try to modify people's behaviors if they become a problem, instead of just kicking people out, because it's harsh going into cells, whatever. And,
shit, you spent your first day yelling and slamming against the window, right? So,
well, my first time in jail, I spent most of my time in cells, which I didn't have a problem with. But being in dorm, there's a different type of freedom and whatever, because, you have privacy when you go to the bathroom. The bathroom's not where you're eating and sleeping, right? It takes some time to get used to having to go to the bathroom in front of an audience, okay? And the strip searches and all that other stuff. But we'll talk about jail later.
You know what? You're in your jail experience because that's where we are in the story. So let's just sit there a little bit. How many days did you spend in jail total?
So I spent 340 days total in jail, real time.
Deana, that's almost a year. And we're talking about a whistle and a squeak toy.
Mm-hmm. And I missed my children's birthdays twice because of the timing of my incarceration. The first one was the most difficult. Both of them were difficult, but my daughter and son are 15 years apart exactly. And my daughter was turning 10, so a decade, and my son was turning 25, a quarter of a century. And that was a very important milestone.
On the same day?
On the same day. And I missed that. And yeah, that was really hard. I was thankful that the jail allowed me to have a visit with them on their birthday and then transferred me the next day out of town, where I spent the next 3.5 weeks, 3 hours away from them in another jail until my bail review, where I finally got released. And then the second time I was in jail, I got to see my kids every Saturday briefly because I had been bounced around. So Ottawa's a remand center. So you only stay if you have court dates coming up in person. Otherwise, they have to transfer you out because all the jails are full. So I went to Napanee, which is Quinte. They transferred me to Vanier Center for Women, which was odd because that's where you go if you've been sentenced. I was not sentenced. That was the worst jail by far. It was disgusting. And then I was transferred to London, 7.5 hours away from home, the EMDC, Elgin Middlesex Detention Center, which ended up being probably my favorite jail, and that is the most dangerous jail, I think, from what I'm hearing. They call it the Devil's Playground. So there's been a lot of deaths that have happened in that jail. I believe some of the COs are part of HA, which is Hell's Angels, or some other gangs. These are things that I was told. I witnessed somebody beating another inmate at the request of the guards, forgetting they get an extra meal. I didn't witness the beating. They were brought into the bathroom because that's where things happen outside of camera view. And I just heard screaming and whatever. And she came back out. She was disabled. She was supposed to be taught a lesson. This is a person who had a mental health issue that I knew from Vanier because she was the cell next to me. She had mental health problems. And luckily in Vanier, even though it was the shittiest jail, the majority of our CEOs that we had, they always worked overtime. There was 3 guys that were there. They actually were good people, and they had so much patience because I was in a maximum security. I preferred that because I had more access time to the phone so that I could run my business. But the majority of the people that are there had severe mental health issues. They couldn't last in the medium security or whatever because of their antisocial behavior, addiction, whatever they had. Also, they didn't make us sleep like they did in medium security. It was ridiculous. You would have 1 hour of outside time, and then they would turn off the lights for 2 hours so that you would go to sleep. And then you would have lunch, and then you would have access.
You mean nap
and
time?
Then yeah.
I thought you meant at nighttime. I was like, that seems kind of reasonable. I mean,
no, nap time twice a day for 2 hours. Who lives like? And then Middlesex was different. It was a different experience. It was a very open space. It was the reason why I liked it is because I ended up in a space where it was a dome cut in half, 2 separate spaces for inmates. It used to be their weekenders, a male, but they had to accommodate the women because Vanier was having all these renovations. They have asbestos. They had to clear out the jail, and they sent us to this place. And it's 44 beds, 22 bunk beds, 11 of them on each side of the walls of this big space, and then tables in the center for everybody to sit at mealtime, and the bathrooms at the back. And guards were there 24/7 at a desk. And you had puzzles and workout stuff and books, and they used to bring us coloring pages. We could do whatever we wanted throughout the day instead of forced naps. And they had way less fights. Vanier fighting, code blue, every day, maybe twice or 3 times a day. Why? Because you're locking people up in cages and like not giving them access to anything. Like, how are you getting us ready for the real world by forcing us to sleep or do nothing for 2 hours? There's other horror stories I could talk about. It's a whole other show. And now I'm an activist for people who are incarcerated. Like, they just put an activist in jail, gave her real life experience on what it is. And I'll just tell everybody very briefly, it is expensive, it is ineffective, and it's redundant. Because if you think that you are denunciating and deterring anybody, all you're doing is, like, the crime doesn't go away because somebody's in jail. They're just doing their crime in jail now. And CEOs are facilitating it. And police officers are facilitating it. It is absolutely the most ridiculous system I had ever seen in my life. And all they want to do is add more. Just understand that. No one's not going to be an addict because they were put away for 2 months, 5 years, whatever. They're not going to stop being an addict. They're just medicating you with something different than putting you back out on the street so that you can probably die because your body is not accustomed to the drugs that you were accustomed to taking before, or you end up back in jail. It's cyclical. This is stupid.
It's even not that we're abolitionists here on Blueprints. It's not a solution to anything. But when you think about the amount of people experiencing these conditions who are awaiting charges and then awaiting bullshit charges is maddening. We're going to talk about your trials next. But you used a phrase at the beginning of the conversation, like political prisoners. And I did not think that would be me. And even the other day I was talking to Santiago and I was like, oh, well, we seem to be in a bit of a niche now of doing interviews with, and I was like, short for a word. And I was like, political prisoners. And I think I was hesitant to use the word because that is not something we are brought up to think that happens in Canada. That, I've done a stint with Amnesty myself, big focus on political prisoners in terrible regimes, right? Would name and shame the regimes. And, you'd read all of these horrible stories. And to hear your story, we just finished talking to the University of Calgary students. Roberta Lexier brought up McGill. There's other universities where students have been completely criminalized, arrested. I gave a few examples today, even in the show, of very basic stuff that's led to sagas. Yours is this epic saga, but and they are political prisoners. Mm-hmm. Because nothing else truly makes sense, especially if you ever try to tell these stories. Like, you're listening now, and my audience will be like, yeah, this is on brand for cops and the Crown these days, the weaponization of anti-Semitism. It's not going to be a surprise. But if you just tell these stories to the layman, to your neighbor who's not politically engaged, they're actually really hard to believe.
Right.
Why would they do that? Why would they, this, that, and the other thing? But some of the hints are there, right? The fact that they were focused on you in the first place because you're an agitator, you are a disruptor. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I know,
no, I am. No.
Sorry, Nora.
Sorry, not sorry.
And, you're a woman, so that's absolutely not allowed. But your ideologies completely clash with those in power, and then you add the Palestinian exception on top of all of this, and only that really helps explain what happened. Now, listening to this, all of us are sitting there's there's no way she was found guilty, right? There's just no fucking way. So you were on some of the charges, but what happened so there's 2 trials, right? So you go to trial for all the breach related.
Well, first, the failure to comply. Yes, the failure to comply, the disruption, and the resist arrest. And so that happened in June of 2025. And I was supposed to be in front of one of the justices or judges. And all of a sudden I moved. Okay. And we're delayed. And it's because they say that they stack courts. And so I moved from Justice Perkins McVeigh, who happened to be, I believe, the one for Chris Barber and Tamara Leach. So she's familiar with, protest and stuff.
Disruption charges.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I am before Justice Michael Boyce. And this is a, younger judge compared to the ages of the judges. He is a white man. And it turned out that he worked for the Crown's office for 20 years, the Ottawa Crown's office. So there's a lot of incest that goes on when it comes to the justice system. And he had just been appointed 11 months earlier, which means he was the Crown in the Ottawa Crown's office when I was arrested, and for 3 months. He knew very well what my case was. And so, in my opinion, he really should have declared a conflict of interest. My Crown, just like every other Crown for the Ottawa Palestinian, Israeli, whatever charges, was Moise Karimji. And Moise Karimji has gotten a lot of heat because he showed his bias big time, because here I am sitting in jail and never touched anybody or anything. And, a woman had her hijab ripped off by a Zionist at one of the Palestinian protests. And this idiot, Crown Moise Karimji, decides to drop the charges because he says, well, the other lady said from the river to the sea, and that's enough to incite violence. I mean, he didn't say it in those words, but that's pretty much the message he sent out, that he's going to drop it because, that action, that those words, I guess, justified her actions. And just because he dropped those charges, there's a lawyer who picked up that case and did something about it. I don't know the full details, but you should know that we got a win. And Laura, what's her name again? Lorna Birnbaum, the one who ripped off the hijab, was ordered to pay a sum of money to the woman, the victim. I just don't know what the amount was, but this was just recent. It happened a week or two ago. So I just want to put that out there, that even if you lose within the criminal justice system in that disgusting sort of way, there's other recourses.
We covered that case. That was one of our guests' aunt, Gada's aunt, I believe.
Yes, I actually saw that. So maybe you want to reach out to her and see about that. There's a win, okay? There's a win out of this. And that Zionist violent woman was required to pay out a certain amount of money. So to the victim.
That was like a bonus update. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Moise Karimji wasn't specifically, he was overseeing that case for the breach, but it was Sophie Reynolds, who was the junior Crown, who was the one who was, dealing with it. Because I only went through the OCJ, which is the Ontario court. Her argument was, even though it says do not use any device or instruments that have sound projection or emission as their sole function, she said, I use this dog squeaky toy, even though it doesn't have a sole function to make noise, because it's a chew toy, it's a toy, whatever. But I used it solely to make noise.
What a bastardization of that language. Like, they give you conditions that you're supposed to be able to understand so you can follow them.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, you when you read it, they gave examples.
Yes.
So that you would more understand what these devices are, like megaphones, but like they don't include things that clearly don't have the sole purpose of amplification, which is like a cell phone. So they try to actually make that very clear for you, because let's say an electronic whistle, that sole purpose is to make noise. Right?
Yep.
Okay. I need people to understand just like why that is so fucked up, because you might get bail conditions and you think you're following them to a T.
Yep.
And this
is the argument they made. And we'll get to what you just said too, because there's more to it. And then the other one was, one officer, Kayla Hottot, about the resist arrest, tried to say I resisted because I was singing instead of listening to her while she was telling me my charges, which, by the way, you have the right to remain silent. Or if you don't want to be silent, you don't have to respond to them either. You can sing. You could make, box. I don't care. You can do whatever you want. That's not resisting arrest. She also tried to say that I tried to pull away and stuff during the arrest, which, like I said, my daughter had filmed. So that didn't happen. And on top of that, the other police officer, Vasilo Christophilakis, got up and testified to something completely opposite and said it only took 5 to 10 seconds immediate to arrest her. He was also lying. It took that time a little bit more, but it's because they were playing hacky sack with my phone, trying to get me to assault them or something, which I wasn't going to do. And they stepped on my daughter's hand, by the way. He pushed my daughter when my daughter went to go pick up my phone after I threw it out of their hacky sack circle. He pushed her and stepped on her hand, which I didn't find out until like 2 weeks later while I was incarcerated. And man, was I fucking livid. Like a 10-year-old, you piece of shit.
Oh my God, I would have been so mad, Deana.
I was pissed. But we had this extra footage. So after Hot Tot lied about all these things that I did, she tried to say that I had the squeaky toy right in front of her face. She tried to say that I was getting in her face, all of this stuff. And then there was the causing a disruption. And the issue with the cause disruption is the judge refused to allow context of the protest. So there was a Nazi demonstration and there was a counter demonstration, and that there is an expectation that a disruption will be had when there is a demonstration and there's a counter demonstration. And so as a result, the judge agreed that I did not resist arrest. He acquitted me on that, but he found me guilty and said that I made an error in law and guilty of the failure to comply. And he found me guilty of causing a disruption. And so, but he gave me a conditional discharge. Not that that matters. I'm still appealing it because, I don't have a criminal record because of it, but it's absurd. It is absurd. And out of principle alone, I am doing the appeal. And that appeal is happening on October 19th. And if I can summarize broad strokes, because I'm not a lawyer, the arguments that we're going to be making is one, like you said, you think that this is clear, the condition about the breach. And the thing is it's not that clear, obviously. And if it isn't clear, the judge is required to side with the defense. Also, because of the imbalance of the law. And the other thing is conditions aren't there to make your life hard. Conditions are there to protect the public. And so you don't impose conditions just to impose conditions to try to, rein people in or whatever. You impose certain conditions to protect the public. And the whole purpose of this sound device is that there is a potential, depending on what, happens in trial, but there's a potential that somebody was harmed by the sound of a whistle. And so they need to, say, okay, well, we need to stop you from using sound that could be potentially harmful to somebody's hearing. Well, we all know that a dog toy, just like a baby toy that is probably in every single fucking household in Canada, or at least almost, right, at one point or another, is not going to affect somebody's hearing. Like we were talking about the bad actors at play, there was a particular person who, might be known to some people or many people, but she has a law degree and often engages in lawfare and tries to, center activists on her social media page and attack them and so on. Well, she came all the way from Toronto to my trial. And there was a publication ban on my trial. And, I was incarcerated, so I had really no say of what was going on. But she showed up on the first day. It was June 11th. And she had already started tweeting about what was happening in the courtroom during a publication ban. So she was removed by the court and the police. We wrapped up the evidence. The case was closed on June 12th. And there was an opportunity for me to a consent for bail on the 13th. And so we were coming back into court on the 13th. I don't believe she knew this because she had been kicked out. She had no idea what was going on because there's a publication ban. But she decided, as a lawyer of all things, she wrote a letter to the judge. Okay. This is the same lawyer who was representing the fake peace bond application. This is why it's important. Okay. So the fake peace bond application that was used as a cudgel against me to keep me in jail, the one that's working with the Crown to try to keep me, to try to, help their case to keep me in jail or find me guilty. She writes a letter to the judge, doesn't CC the Crown, doesn't CC the defense. It's called ex parte communication. This is not something lawyers should be doing on a judge seized on a case where all the evidence had already been heard. And in that letter, she wanted to get permission to come to my sentencing. And had she left it at that, that would have been fine. But she decided to write all this extra inflammatory, non-tested accusations against me about how she has a client that is filing an 810 against me because of my protest activity. I'm known to do this and that. And she's representing another client, And then in the letter, okay, she writes, Moise Karimji, remember he's the Crown on my case, because she was posting incessantly about me while there's a publication ban and my case, by the way. And I believe she was breaching the publication ban. But of course, the Crown and, police aren't going to do shit about it. If I post about something, I'll probably get arrested.
This is someone who's openly also admitted to providing police with their footage that little scooter boy obtains and sharing them with TPS and like openly brags about this. So we're talking about like the epitome of a bootlicker.
That's right. 100%. And because she had said that she provided the Crown with evidence, I remind you that she is a potential witness. And in her letter to the judge, she says, I received a text message from Moise Karimji, Crown attorney, and he asked me to take down some of my posts, not because I was doing anything wrong, but because, and she puts in quotation marks, it would make my job easier, end quotation marks. So it would make his job easier if she took those down. Now, the issue with that is, A, she's trying to taint the judge's perception. She probably did. Okay. I had been in jail for fucking 9.5 months at this point. Okay. Like we just needed me to get the fuck out.
What the fuck did they want from you after that? Oh my God.
Yeah, I know it's frustrating. And yes, and I'm still, dealing with it. But so
what is their deal?
I know. So you are not, as a Crown, allowed to speak to potential witnesses without a police officer present. So what the fuck are you doing texting privately with a potential witness? And so what a fucking mess that made, right? Like these...
Who has clear bias against 100%. You.
Oh, Moise Karimji, by the way, if anybody needs a reminder, the breach exposed this secret anti-hate crime committee that's funded by the province. Moise Karimji was on that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll link that episode too.
Yeah, like there's just so many twists and turns that, yes, you're right. If I speak about this to just any normal person, I should just be, put in a category of tinfoil hat. But no, like these are all legit. And it gets worse. Okay. When we talk about the other trial and how the cameras were trained on me, so now I'm found guilty. It's a conditional discharge. I have a new set of probation rules because, there's victims, Nazis, victims, because I was released on bail, plus I was conditionally discharged. So I have two sets of conditions. One's bail conditions, but this time they denied me the ability to be on social media and talk about any conflict. I couldn't talk about my experience in jail. I couldn't talk about, let's say, whatever, I have an argument with somebody in a car or something, like road rage, something, whatever you want to say, nothing, any conflict. I was not allowed to speak on social media about. I was not allowed to go to any protests. They banned me from every protest now, which was unconstitutional. And I was very much looking forward to doing a bail review. We were talking about it, and CCLA, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, was even going to assist. But by the time they would have a lawyer ready, my trial for the original charges were supposed to be January 5th, and they were only available in the new year. Once you have a judge seized on your case, that becomes the judge who's going to do the bail review.
So we're at the part where you're finally going to get a judge to hear the evidence against a slew of charges, right? 9 charges. We're back to just to remind the viewers briefly, this was the Fox whistle, the electronic whistle.
It's an electronic Fox 40 whistle.
I didn't know they had electronic ones. Fancy.
And you know what? I just want you to know, and you can link this to your show if you want, but if you go on the referee channel on YouTube and go Fox 40 whistle, the referee tests every single Fox 40 whistle. There's 21 of them. And you will see that the Fox 40 rechargeable whistle is the second quietest whistle by far. The loudest whistles are the actual manual whistles. It's ridiculous. Okay. So just to give you context, just because it says electronic whistle, it doesn't mean that it's louder. It just means that it's a consistent sound and you don't have to do the work other than push a button.
I think there's layers of ridiculousness, right? If you had a manual whistle and you were using it to stop an altercation or to draw attention to a violent person, that's its intended use, by the way.
Yeah, 100%.
That original marketing, it was a rape whistle, right, when they really got popular. And so women were trained to blow it in a crisis. So there's a hint of what happened at the trial. Basically, you had to bring in hearing experts because did you go to trial with the bodily harm charge or did they drop that before trial?
No. They had, before trial, they had reduced it. This wasn't right before. This was when we had our first judge. They brought it down because assault with causing bodily harm, they have to prove the bodily harm, and they knew they couldn't prove it. There was no evidence to show that this person and either person was harmed by this whistle. Okay, so now it's just assault with a weapon,
right, and
they just have to prove that there's a potential to harm somebody. Okay. There doesn't have to be actual harm.
Oh.
And so they reduced it to assault with a weapon. And then they also, the day before, dropped the assault a police officer because, hey, guess what? There's no fucking evidence because it didn't happen. I didn't assault a police officer. Just like I said to the original police officer who arrested me, I didn't assault a police officer anyway. So those, I ended up going with the 7 charges, and I went for jury. So the judge's role was supposed to, direct the jury. It was 16 fucking days of trial for my charges. Okay. Murderers don't get that long of a trial. Just so you know, 16 days. The first guy, I think it started with David Sachs. He comes in with a crutch. All of a sudden, he needs one crutch. And he wobbles his way in there and, testifies all day. Nora did a fantastic job. And then the next day was Brad Viss, and he came in and, he testified. Nora did a fantastic job. The Crown and the judge refused to allow us to put up evidence of, their actual behaviors, their social media posts, there was one with Brad Viss. This one was, this one upset him very much when he realized where my lawyer was going with this. He said he had never heard anything as loud as this whistle or whatever, and that it was like alarming and scary. But if, on his Instagram, he has a video of him chop sawing a cement paver without hearing protection, his ear basically a foot away because he's leaning in, and for 35 seconds straight, he is sawing through this paver. But it gets better, because not only did he show that he sawed this paver, but the next portion of the video is you walking and seeing his whole backyard and the 37 other pavers that he had to chop without hearing protection along the fence. And you're going to try to say that you suffered hearing damage from this electronic whistle. There was so much to it. Anyway, their argument was that there's a potential that I could have hurt his hearing with how close I was, how long the whistle was blowing for without a pause, and so on. Our hearing specialist said there's absolutely no way with the way that she used that whistle that it could have caused any damage. Okay.
Plus, crimes require intent.
Correct.
So most people don't think that a whistle that is given out, that is widely available is going to cause harm.
The whole reason for the pursuit and the whistle and everything was because he had attacked 4 of us first, violently. If anybody should have been charged, he should have been charged. And I should have never received an assault with a weapon. That would have been a self-defense charge. They never convicted me of it anyways. But here's the issue. Remember I told you that the PPS was training their camera on me? Well, PPS had their camera trained on me when he came out of the building. You don't get to see him push the female with the sign. And when it got to the point where it would have been he would have been in camera view, the camera went completely to the opposite side and held there for a good 30 seconds, 20 seconds. I don't remember however long the interaction took. It's facing a wall. And then when the interaction was over and we start walking and I'm yelling at the PPS, I'm actually against the wall, blowing my whistle, but nowhere to go. They're coming in front of me before I start behind them. Then the camera comes on us. And they admitted that the camera was trained on me in our discoveries. And why was the camera trained on me? My lawyer says, because she had been previously trespassed from Parliament Hill. Who cares? That's not enough. Trespass? I didn't even do anything on Parliament Hill to be trespassed, but whatever, I was trespassed. And I never went to Parliament Hill since. It had been a full month. I wasn't on Parliament Hill.
There's a million reasons why that camera was trained on you. Every time you went out.
100%. They're full of shit. I wasn't even on the Escham property. I was on the public sidewalk the entire time. There was absolutely no reason. And this is after 4 hours of an action. So at that point, why you need your camera trained on me? There were police officers there earlier too, and those police officers decided that they didn't need to stay anymore. Weird, eh? So
conveniently weird.
Yeah, so there was no camera footage for me to corroborate my story of this guy attacking. He only admitted to getting in a kerfuffle or some idiotic word like that with some woman and a sign and the drummer, but he obviously didn't fess up to what he actually was engaged in. And I have a body camera where that is being held by the Crown and the police, as that was taken from me when I was first arrested. So they took my cell phone, they took my body camera, and they kept a pint of theater blood for dramatic purposes. And me, it was for dramatic purposes. I had done an action where I was covered in blood and whatever, and I kept it in my activist bag. But they literally, when they were saying it in court, they were just like, and blood, acting like it was real blood. So my lawyer literally had to pull up the fucking ingredients and be like, what is this word? Water. Like, just, I can't. Like it, and they were so fucking dirty. The Crown was so dirty. They held on to knowledge of the detective for 2 weeks, I think it was. They told my lawyer that morning of her to cross-examining him that he had tested the whistle when he first received it in evidence. Why are you testing a weapon if it's so dangerous? In his office with one other person there. So in closed quarters, he sounded the whistle. And they wanted to sound the whistle in the courtroom after telling us how dangerous it is. And it's like, wait a second. Why do you want to sound it inside a courtroom if it's so dangerous? Like, it was so ridiculous and so bizarre. But in the end, there was direction given to the jury. The jury ended up finding me guilty of assault with a weapon with Brad Viss and guilty of criminal harassment with David Sachs, but not guilty of being in possession of a weapon. So somehow I assaulted somebody with a weapon, but I didn't have a weapon on me.
I know. I think, like, my understanding, because
I'm not a lawyer.
Maybe. No, nor am I, is that simply holding an electronic whistle, it is not a weapon, right?
Correct. And the judge stated that as well.
But it somehow, it transforms into one with the actions of a person, allegedly.
Right. Yeah. So a straw is not going to be a weapon, but if you throw it at somebody, then you can be charged with assault with a weapon, with a straw.
It's all very complicated, but yeah. So, okay. So not guilty on the possession, but in the end, that is important. That whistle was still really branded as a weapon, or its use of it.
Yes.
It became a weapon in a manner in which quite a few of us have used it before. Any other guilty verdicts there? There were. No. Okay.
Nope. That's it. By the way, the directed. Okay, so I forgot to mention that the Constable Hotot was the one who arrested me originally at the original charges after the male cop. She lied on the stand again because the day before they dropped the assault, the police officer, but I was still up for the obstruction, and so she lied. She wasn't even trying to arrest the person that I was trying to help, that I helped. I didn't try. I helped that person. She, was trying really hard to fit a square, or a circle peg into a square hole, or whatever the saying is. And it just wasn't working out. And here's video, of what actually happened, because they had one of the videos from the building. No, none of that happened. So in the directed verdict by my lawyer, the judge agreed. This is, not what happened here. And he acquitted me of that case. It did not need to go to the jury. And so the jury only had the leftover 6 charges. The judge eats up all of my jail time, just like the Crown wants, because, I did the time anyways, and my time is worth 17 months. I had, it's time and a half when you're legally innocent. So he took 10 months for the assault with a weapon. So I essentially went to jail for 10 months for an electronic whistle and 7 months for the criminal harassment charge of a guy that I had never met before, who assaulted 4 of us peacefully protesting, doing our Charter of Rights. They did not go for the hate motivation as they had tried originally. They had not proven any hate-related motivation, never went to the jury. And they tried to bring up the kippah a couple of times and tried to say he's visibly Jewish, but they weren't getting anywhere with it. And so that's where we're at. And now I must appeal, because the issue with the assault with sound, and this should have been acquitted with the obstruction, because assault with a weapon is very clear that it requires force or the threat of force. And at no point was there any arguments that force was used, and that sound is a force. It's more of an abstract. And this is exactly what the judge said. He kind of twisted himself in a knot after it's as if he didn't even listen to my lawyer when she made her arguments, or he read her stuff, listened to it, but it didn't register until, the time to give the charge to the jury came along. And he was so twisted in a knot about how he was going to provide a direction to the jury. Yeah, so of course I have to appeal this for everybody's sake. We're talking about anybody and everybody that they're going to try to start charging people using sound. And so I will take that all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada if I have to. But let's just start, I guess, with this. And then the criminal harassment charge, I've put in my request for an appeal. I'm at the stage now, though, where I need a lawyer. I have a lawyer, but I need to pay this lawyer. I've paid a shit ton of money so far with, thankfully, the help of my community. But I need to lean on my community some more because I have to pay this lawyer to review this, tell me what arguments, if there are, to have this appeal. So there's an initial amount I have to pay for that. And luckily that amount will transfer to the actual appeal because most of the work had been done. But I'm looking at spending money on 16 days worth of transcripts. So I'm looking at an upfront cost of probably, I would say, $25,000 just before we even hit the Court of Appeal. And should I win my appeal, guess what? I get to do a trial all over again for those two charges.
Damn. We were trying to calculate some of the costs before. There's probably so many things you even lose track of.
No, I did a spreadsheet.
Oh, did you finally do a spreadsheet? But also, like, there's things you can't even quantify. Right?
Parking.
Like losses that happen and costs that are incurred that just become things you wouldn't have had to deal with. So
it's $22 a day to park. Okay.
It
times
all adds
16.
Up. It all fucking adds up.
It's $300 in parking right there.
Yeah. So we'll have a link in the show notes for folks who can chip in for support. Let's say you chose not to appeal. Like, let's just kind of put that on the shelf for a second. You've served your time. Mm-hmm. You're out of jail. You do have some conditions we'd rather you not have.
Right.
So you are still living under this. Even if you had walked away, you're like, fuck it. I got what I got. Move on, right? We've got a genocide to stop still.
Yep.
But you are continually being targeted, too. Your freedom is still at risk, even if you were really to comply. Because, like, we've got people still online bragging about filing police reports about you attending actions for Venezuela or, just literally trying to catch you up. Someone looking at 17 months time served, really, right, is not...
Yep. They want to shut me up.
It's not enough for you. Yeah, so we talk a lot about on the show strategic incapacitation. Right? So, like, whether or not the charges are bullshit, the actions of right-wing media folks, or whatever we're going to call them, we should have a better name for them, something really insulting, but the police, the Crown, all of these institutions, their goal is not necessarily to end up with a sentence. They did in this case. They were able to lock you up for quite some time, but there's so many other ways they try to take you out of the movement here, right? From the bail conditions to the costs you're incurring, the demonization that you have, right? You've mentioned a potential job loss. All these things, they add up. Yep. Now, reflecting on it all, I am amazed at your composure talking about this. I know you've had a lot of time to move through these feelings, so you might not be in the place you were when it was happening, but how do you feel they did in terms of their job to incapacitate you from the movements?
Well, I mean, they were successful. There are things that are at risk for me still, not just about me going to jail, but I'm trying to catch up with life. And those risks are real. my son was able to hold the fort down, but I have to, I'm behind on very important things to do with, the stability of my company and my household, and financially. I have not been living paycheck to paycheck since 2011, when I started my own company and actually started being successful. We are the 18th of the month, and I think I have $2 in my account, and I'm relying on my mother. I just had to change my time. It's so frustrating. I had to get my wisdom teeth taken out last week. I had to borrow that money from my mother, and because they started rotting in jail. And so I had to have them removed last week, which set me back about $1,000. And normally I was able to, get through these sort of little crisis and whatever. But now, if I didn't have the support of my family, I'd be screwed. There's a lot going on. Yes, I'm strong, and I know why they're doing this to me, and I know why they're doing this to us as a movement. But these things are essentially first world problems, okay? Jail was a horrible place. It was a disgusting, discriminatory, sickening place, and I hated every minute of it. I mean, I had friends, and I had a good time. Whatever. But I would have rather been with my family. But I thought about, the disgusting food that I'm eating, but the people in Palestine are dying just trying to get flour. That all happened before I even went to jail, where they're shooting people trying to get flour. Okay. I don't have the right to stop what I'm doing just because the bad people who are perpetuating the crimes against the Palestinian people are happening. Furthermore, those things that are happening to Palestinians, and I don't have to preach to your audience, is exactly what's coming to us next, or it's already happening. It's here. The mass surveillance, the brutality, the violence, the extermination, the imprisonment, all of these things, it's a mirror. It just hasn't reached the extreme to us, I say to us, but I'm in a more privileged space. But our Black and Brown community members, it's happening to them. Our Indigenous women, girls, boys, it's happening to them in real time. We keep finding out that they're monitoring us and they're surveilling us and trying to take apart our movements. Well, we have no choice but to become stronger in the face of this, or else what are we going to do? And I do see that my behavior has changed. I feel like, when I'm speaking with people, when I used to do things in jest, when I was protesting and live streaming, I see that I get angry faster. Okay. You'll hear it in my tone. Shut the fuck up is what I tell people now. It's not like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And, humiliate them that way. I have no fucking time for you anymore, you piece of shit. Shut your bigoted mouth. That's where I'm at now, right? They radicalize me even more. What do you want? I am working towards getting back the other, the more humorous Deana, but she's not always going to be there. I still don't believe in myself personally. I don't give a shit about violence is necessary in movements. It is the only thing that happened for the suffragettes. They literally bombed places, right? Breaking apart Elbit systems is a thing, right? Their weapons and stuff like that. I don't care about that stuff. But for me personally, I don't engage in violence unless it's brought to me, right? You will never see me hit anybody first, ever, ever, ever. I don't need to. I don't want to. But people have come to me and been violent with me, and I fight back. That's what I will always do. It's either fight or flight, and I'm the fight, right? I went up against nail gun Zionists. No, it wasn't even a thought process. It was, you just hit my friend. Who the fuck are you? And it wasn't until after that I saw the magnitude of what this psychotic piece of shit did, which, by the way, he's pleading guilty, and that's happening on Monday.
That one's taken a long time. I thought maybe he was going to be off for length of...
I think he had fired his lawyer, and now he's taking a plea deal, and our victim impact statements need to be in by tomorrow. So yeah, so it's affected me, for sure. But it also changed me in ways that, I think needed to happen. You can be a white person or a white passing person and think you understand what marginalized people are going through. You can fight for them and whatever. But until you're actually placed in the same circumstances that they are placed in all the time, I always understood microaggressions and I always understood. But when you black and brown people tell this all the time. They are told to moderate their tone and be polite in their genocide or their brutality and all this other stuff. They need to be polite. And it's like, I only suffered through that for maybe 2 years or something, if you want to put it all together. And it's fucking exhausting. And they have to deal with it their entire goddamn lives. So they don't like me swearing, like you had said, because I'm a woman. Yeah, a woman swearing? How dare you swear? I've got a fucking potty mouth, and now it's really coming out. But I've got a potty mouth. And if you have a problem with that, but you don't have a problem with the genocide, or you think that my swearing is more troubling than, children with missing limbs and journalists getting sniped at and doctors and nurses being bombed and their families, go fuck yourself. I don't have time for you.
No.
I have no time for you.
It's not just your language too. It's you, and you know that it's what you represent, right? Defying authority, fearlessness, solidarity, right? Like grand displays of solidarity. These are things that make the powerful very uncomfortable. And they're not just sending a message to you. They are trying to remove you from the game, and they have deeply, like, you can't say this isn't personal, because it was. But they're sending a message to all your comrades at the same time. Anybody who's watching, take down the most boisterous, strong person in the room, and the idea is the rest will crumble. But you saw your community rally around you. One of the things that got you, like, you seem pretty steady, and we hear anger all the time. Valid. But when I spoke to you before, when you talked about the letters people wrote for you when it came time to sentencing, or, vouching for your character, all that work to try to tear you down and paint you as a villain resulted in you being reminded of how valuable and loved you are in your community.
Oh man, it brought me to tears. And actually, I might even try not to cry right now, but yeah, absolutely. And you do things in your daily life. You see somebody who needs something, you do what you can. And I happen to work in a situation where there's a lot of people who have a need. And so I just do things and don't think much about it. But when it came time to get these letters of reference, I sent it out to a couple of people, and they sent it out to the entire community. And we ended up with all these letters back, and just these beautiful, sincere letters of how they know me, what I had done for them, things that I totally didn't remember until, I remember them now that they bring it up. But that's not the relationship that we have. I know them as, who they are, other than, what pinch they were in or whatever. And I felt like I was at my funeral. This is the first trial. And that's, the judge said, I have never seen this quality of letters. And not only is Deana a good member of society, she is a trusted member of society, something along those lines. It was very powerful what he said. And, that brought him to the conditional discharge. And then again, I think we had 10 letters for the first trial. And then the second trial, we ended up with far more than 10 letters. And I think my lawyer used 20. And 4 of them, I believe, came from the Jewish community, or members of the Jewish community, not specifically the Jewish community, but members of the Jewish community. But they were, once again, beautiful, exceptional letters. And the judge again said, I've been working on, I think, in law for whatever he said on the bench for however long, and I've never, ever seen this many and the quality of these letters. He still went ahead and gave the Crown, what they wanted. But at the end of the day, I like, my community has been there for me, my family, which was really important that they wrap themselves around my family. My son didn't really understand everything that I was doing. He knows I'm an activist, but he didn't really understand the depth of it until when I first got arrested and, my friends, activists, whatever, put up a GoFundMe. And within a week, $8,000 had been raised before it was taken down and then had to be brought up on another site because of those actors who really wanted me to fail and had it shut down. But yeah, so it's important to have good community. And this is something I really want to tell everybody is like, if one of your comrades gets arrested, all the footage that you have of that event, send it directly to their lawyer. Do not pass go. Get everything you can. Don't delete it. Don't whatever. Just if you want to delete it, no problem. But delete it after you send it to the lawyer. And the lawyer will decide whether or not it will help them. And be ready to, support them. Court support is a huge thing. Showing up for people when they're having court. Getting ready to write letters of support from the community. All of these things matter. And it shows the court. We've moved a long way, even though we haven't, but we have, from the day that I got arrested until now. And I knew when I first retained Nora, I said to her, things are going to look a lot, because they decided to indict me. We forgot to mention that part, but they decided to indict me so I could go up to jail for up to 10 years for these charges. And I said, the world's going to look a lot different in 2 years because, they had 30 months before they needed to put me. I could have stayed in jail for 30 months if I was denied bail some more. So because that's when the clock runs out. But that's 2.5 years. And the world has gotten to see and fully or better understand what has really been happening for the last, 50, 60, 70, even 80 years under the Zionist occupation. And not just Palestine. We're talking about the Middle East. We're talking about our governments and our institutions. People are getting it now. And it's bipartisan. I wasn't sure that the right would fucking get it, but they're getting it.
Yeah. In terms of the fascist tactics of the state. And
I'm talking about the Zionist grip on our institutions. I don't think the right cares about fascism, to be quite honest. What I do think is that if they're not the ones in control of being the fascists, then it's a problem. And that's a road we'll hit later. But for now, we need to do a cleanse of our institutions and our systems and whatever. And no foreign actors get to dictate how we are as Canadians, First Nations, Indigenous people, settlers on this land. We have a lot of our own reconciliation that we need to be doing as well. And I think that's probably why and I know this is off topic, so you can take this out or whatever, but I think this is one of the obstacles that our government is, facing, is that if we contend with the Palestinian issue, we need to contend with our issue. And Mark Carney's just a big fucking bigot fascist anyway.
Absolutely. Like the model for the occupation was taken from the colonization of Indigenous people here. And so understanding that helps understand why governments, even liberal, bleeding heart liberal so-called governments would be so complicit and participate in the genocide in the way that they're doing. And it's, yes, the Zionist lobby is powerful and influential. There's definitely no doubt about that. But they really don't have to twist very many arms to get them to crack down on resistors of any form, right? This kind of gives them the cover to do it. They also a scapegoat, right? In the end, if this all blows up, they will just completely blame the Zionist lobby. Absolutely. And pretend like it wasn't all something they were looking forward to anyway. They're just eroding our rights at a record pace. But I think... Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Holy cow, at a record pace. Like it and I can't believe Canadians are slow at the wheel to stand up to this. This is a problem. Just because you might not be part of anything right now, it will creep into your everyday life. Like you might not be an activist. You might not be somebody who comes out and is as boisterous as myself or some of your other guests or, causing these major disruptions. But the reason why we do this is because we see what's coming down the road for the average person who just wants to wake up and go to work and go to the cottage on the weekend and do these things, whatever. This is affecting your children's futures in a big way. We just have to keep moving. We just have to keep going. And we wanted to talk about, this being a cautionary tale, but also not scaring people out of activism. And you don't have to be the radical person or as radical as some of us are, although I would appreciate if you were. And people should step outside of their comfort zone. But just being there and I know these things seem like they're not really moving the needle, but they have. And the pressure that we put on our governments matters. And showing up to, disrupt status quo is important. And it's within our charter. We are allowed to do this. And the more of us that do it, the less, negative outcomes there will be, given the fact that this is what the masses want. We don't have to wait until a piece of our land is being sold off like Albania for everybody to get out onto the streets, right? We don't have to wait for government to be uber fascist like you see in Bolivia or whatever is happening, for everybody to rise up. We need a general strike, and we need a general strike now. Right? That is the best way. If we want to be the polite Canadian, whatever, we can put a stop to all of this if all of us politely get off our asses and get out into the street and shut shit down. It can be done politely and non-violently, but it can't be done politely and non-violently with just a few of us, right? It needs to be a coordinated, organized, union-led movement to shut everyday business down until this government divests from the genocidal entity that is Israel and makes a commitment to what Canadians thought that we were, even though we never were. But if you want to brag about who we were when we never were that, then let's give ourselves a reason to brag about who we are if we become that.
No arguments. Again, it's the premise of the show, right, is to give people the tools, the cautionary tales, but also the motivation to be disruptive to these systems, to caution people away from reforms as well, because when you just see how these institutions work, then this is how they were designed. They're doing their job, and but that doesn't mean we can't navigate through them a little bit more informed, right? So yes, we tell these stories. You should be shocked, you should be angry, and it should add caution to how you approach, but not fear. And with that constant reminder that the alternative is so much worse, right? Not doing something is so much worse than facing possible consequences. So I very much appreciate, you know, your persistence to the cause. It would have been easy for you to take a plea deal, take the bail conditions, slither off. It might have eaten away at your soul, but it would have been financially easier for you to do. Your mom might have appreciated it. But
my mom is a hardcore activist, but not sweary and, you know, whatever, like I am. She, yeah. And that's where I got it from. Like, you know, her care for community, her entire life, and her activism. We just have different ways of going about it.
Fair enough. Well, she raised a lioness, right? And I'm sure she knows that now. And I do appreciate you coming on the show to share your experience. And in the end, even though we've talked for quite some time, it's really just a snippet of what you went through. Some of it, I imagine, you're going to hold close to your chest for a while, the impact. But sharing it does matter. And
it does.
You're going to help people by hearing this. They'll be better informed. We'll link people to some of the resources that we've referenced, as well as some of the contact information for movement lawyers that we've done in the past. And you've given...
See, I was being a little bit selfish when you said sharing matters. I'm like, yes, it does, because I'm getting it off my chest. But you were speaking in the context of people understanding what happened. And yes, that does too. Yeah, so thank you.
Well, shit, if I can be assistance to you, then that's a bonus.
And I needed to say, like, because of people like you who are interested in hearing the story of, you know, what happened, so that we can mobilize and, you know, whatever, it matters to me that I am able to, you know, share my story, because that was one of the issues with my conditions of not being able to speak about any conflict on social media. Like, I cried in the court right away. And that's exactly what I said. I can't even talk about jail. This is a complete violation of my charter rights. I said that out loud. It's in the transcripts. Like, but I had to agree to it if I wanted to get out, is what the judge said.
Yeah, no, you were constantly put in really difficult situations. I don't think many people are going to go back and look and judge any of your choices.
I mean, if you know me by now, I don't give a shit.
I think people who've listened to this know you don't give a shit, even if they've never heard of you before. Well, I'm glad I stumbled across you. I think I even just knew the tip of the iceberg. That Google search this morning kind of just reignited the rage that I have against the people that have seemingly made it their mission to try to tear you down. It's equally as enraging as it is funny.
I mean, but like I said, when you brought it up, these are the people that, like, when I read the trolls and the comments that they say, it's, I mean, whoever has never been assaulted online, for some people, it affects them. Yeah. And I had already gone through it the one time, so I knew what to expect. But these are bigots. These are genocidal maniacs. I don't want them to like me.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
Not liking you is one thing, Deana, but they're trying to take away your freedom. And I don't want you to spend any energy on them. And I'm glad you're like in this kind of like zen, fuck you, you don't impact me. But they're trying to put you in jail. So that impacts all of us. We're pissed. We're allowed to fucking be like, fuck you. Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what we can do about it. But I damn sure am allowed to be angry about that, because bootlickers make me angry to begin with. But like taking the freedom away from someone who's already served a ridiculous amount of time for what we've just described here, speaks volumes about what kind of people these are, because they're the same kind of people who cried about their ringleaders facing time. And to be fair, I cried along with them, because I think all that suppression of dissent is bullshit. It all comes from the same crown and the same cops. They can all go fuck themselves. I'll defend their right to be disruptive, but they would never defend ours. So
I remember going to the first two trial dates for the Chris Barber, Tamara Leach, and I was pissed with the Crown for not giving them the evidence that they were required to give to them. I was like, what is this bullshit? The judge ordered these emails and text messages to be sent to the defense. this is disgusting. And you could find those tweets if you look, through my stuff. It's disgusting because the Crown was playing games or they were unprepared. That's what I said. And either one is not helpful. And then when I dealt with it myself and seeing all the last minute stuff that was coming at us and the stuff that they, changing and whatever, these videos that they brought at the last minute that they were going to do a compilation of my video, they were playing fucking games. And so that's what the Crown does. And that's not a pursuit of justice, people. That is just trying to get people in jail to fulfill the need of this system to continue. And it shouldn't happen to anybody. If it happens to one person, it will happen to somebody else who you don't want it to happen to. It's not how the system is supposed. I mean, it is supposed to work that way, but we shouldn't be okay with it working that way.
Well, that's why we're trying to tear the systems down. That's okay.
Anyway,
next steps, right, baby? We'll get there. When do we want? Eventually. I'm not a patient person. So
I mean, I have my days. I had to be patient while I was in jail, or I'd go crazy.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Right,
Deana? Thanks for everything. Honestly, it's bullshit what you've had to put up with. I hope your appeals are successful. I don't know what else to say to that. I think the audience will just be aghast at the treatment that you've received. And, let's hope it spurs people into action. But, is there any kind of last words that you want to leave the audience with?
I just want to say that everything that we're doing is worth it. And everybody should keep fighting the fight. We get inspired by every different type of moment. Go to film screenings to remind yourself what you're doing it for. Go to, events with panels. Go to the protests so that you can recharge. And don't worry about what the fascists think about you, because it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are successful. Don't be distracted. Just keep, the focus is the Palestinian people are the Palestinian people, and that we win this, and we will win. We absolutely will win. And if you are able to help me and support me financially so that I can, get over this next hurdle, then there's a crowdfunding space, but I would prefer the direct e-transfers because I lose a big chunk. And I made a commitment that I would be paying everybody back. It might not be immediate, but if I'm going to pay back the amount of money that you've paid towards this initiative, I would like to get 100% of those proceeds and pay back the 100% of those proceeds. And it's freedeana@gmail.com. And my name is spelled Deana. So freedeana now@gmail.com. And you could just Google and find the crowdfunding if you prefer it that way. And I'm keeping track. And I am so thankful to you, Jessa, for having me on. And solidarity, everyone. Free Palestine.
This is your genocide. You're not even trying to hide it. International war crimes. This is your genocide. Amputations, no anesthesia. You murdered generations. The whole world sees ya. Women miscarrying, white flags shot down. Indiscriminate bombing to make intentional ghost towns. This is your genocide. Israeli war crimes. 8-decade apartheid. This is your genocide.
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Also, a very big thank you to the producer of our show, Santiago Halu Quintero. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption, If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.